The night of a silent goodbye. What if I told you that one night could change everything? One night where a simple mistake, one you've been making for years, could be the difference between waking up or never opening your eyes again. John Carter never thought much about his bedtime routine. At 72, he was still active. He took morning walks, played cards with friends, and loved spending time with his grandkids. His doctor always said he was in good health for his age. He had no major medical conditions, no signs of trouble. Life was steady, predictable, until the night it wasn't. It started like any other evening. John had dinner a little later than usual, spaghetti with garlic bread, a small glass of red wine, and a slice of his favorite apple pie. He leaned back in his chair, feeling full and satisfied, watching the news on TV. Before bed, he made himself a cup of herbal tea, something he believed helped him sleep better. His bedroom was warm and cozy, just the way he liked it. He slipped under his thick, familiar blanket, resting his head against the pillow. As he drifted off, he had no idea it would be his last night. The next morning, John didn't wake up. His daughter Sarah came by to check on him, as she often did. She knocked. No answer. She called his name. Silence. When she finally stepped inside, she found him still in bed, motionless, peaceful, but gone. The paramedics arrived, but it was too late. The doctors said he had suffered a silent cardiac event in his sleep. No struggle, no warning, just one last breath in the middle of the night. His family was devastated. He had been fine just hours before. How could this happen? The answer was hidden in his routine. His habits, things he had done every night for years without a second thought, were slowly working against him. And the worst part, he never even realized it. Because the truth is, after 70, our bodies change in ways we don't always notice. Our digestion slows, our hearts work harder, and our ability to regulate temperature weakens. Something as small as eating too late, drinking too much water before bed, or even sleeping in the wrong position can create a chain reaction, a silent storm inside your body. But here's the good news. These risks aren't set in stone. You don't have to live in fear of bedtime. You don't have to accept these risks as part of aging. You just need to understand them and make a few simple changes to protect yourself. If you or someone you love is over 70, this might be the most important thing you hear today. Because tonight, you have a choice. You can keep making the same mistakes, or you can take control of your health, starting now. Let's take a closer look at 4 bedtime habits that could be costing you your health, and how a few simple changes could save your life. Imagine your body as a fireplace. Before bed, you throw in heavy logs, pasta, steak, dessert, thinking it will keep you warm through the night. But instead of a steady burn, the fire rages uncontrollably, keeping you restless, overheating your system, and putting pressure on your heart. That's exactly what John Carter did every night. John had always been a late eater. Ever since his retirement, dinner time had slowly shifted later and later. There was no rush anymore, no deadlines, no morning commutes. He enjoyed taking his time, preparing hearty meals, and sitting down to eat at 9 o'clock or sometimes even later. A thick steak, a side of buttery mashed potatoes, a glass of red wine, and of course dessert, a habit that had been part of his life for decades. After dinner, he would relax in his recliner, watching the evening news. He felt full, satisfied, even a little sleepy. To him, there was nothing unusual about this. It was just another normal evening. But what John didn't realize was that his body was no longer working the way it used to. As we age, our digestive system slows down. The body doesn't break down food as efficiently as it once did. What used to be an easy meal for a 40-year-old can become a nighttime burden for a 70-year-old's heart and stomach. Every night after his late dinner, John's body had to work overtime to digest the heavy food. Instead of resting, his stomach was busy breaking down fat, his intestines were processing sugars, and his heart was pumping harder to circulate blood. Then came the discomfort. At first it was small things, a little heartburn here, a little bloating there, nothing that seemed out of the ordinary. But over time the symptoms grew worse. Some nights John would wake up with a burning sensation in his chest. His throat felt raw, and he had a bitter taste in his mouth. Other nights his heart pounded, strangely, as if it were trying to catch up to something. Sweat dampened his pillow even though the room wasn't warm. He brushed it off. "This is just part of getting older," he told himself. "A little discomfort is normal, right?" What he didn't know was that his late-night eating habit was putting silent stress on his body every single night. Eating large meals before bed, especially meals high in fat, sugar, or alcohol, can lead to serious health problems. When you lie down with a full stomach, stomach acid can creep up into the esophagus, causing heartburn, coughing, and even choking sensations in sleep. Over time, untreated acid reflux can lead to esophageal damage and increased risk of throat cancer. A heavy meal forces the heart to work harder, keeping blood pressure elevated when it should be lowering at night. High blood pressure at night is a major risk factor for strokes and heart attacks, instead of allowing the body to relax and enter deep sleep. Digestion keeps the nervous system activated, making sleep more restless and shallow. Poor sleep quality is directly linked to cognitive decline, weakened immunity, and increased inflammation. Late-night eating is also associated with poor blood sugar regulation, which can lead to insulin resistance, weight gain, and a greater risk of type 2 diabetes. John had no idea that his nightly habits were working against him, silently pushing him closer to a health crisis. The night John passed away, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. His body was digesting his heavy meal just like always. His stomach was producing acid. His heart was working harder. His blood pressure remained elevated. But this time, something went wrong. His heart, already under pressure, couldn't keep up. In the middle of the night, while his body was supposed to be in deep rest, it gave out. No one saw it coming. No alarms, no warning signs, just one peaceful breath. And then, silence. John's story is heartbreaking, but it doesn't have to be yours. If you often eat late at night, now is the time to reconsider your habits. It may seem harmless, but the effects accumulate over time. Your body isn't as forgiving as it once was. Here's what you can do to protect yourself. Finish your last meal at least 3 to 4 hours before bedtime. This gives your digestive system enough time to process food before you lie down. Choose lighter, easier to digest meals for dinner. Swap out heavy meats and fried foods for lean proteins like fish, steamed vegetables, and whole grains. If you need a late-night snack, make it small and light. A handful of nuts, a banana, or a warm cup of herbal tea can actually support restful sleep rather than disrupt it. Limit alcohol and caffeine in the evening. Both can interfere with digestion and raise nighttime blood pressure. Listen to your body. If you often experience heartburn, bloating, or wake up feeling restless, your eating habits may be affecting your sleep more than you realize. It's easy to think, "I've been eating this way for years. Why change now?" But here's the reality. Small habits, repeated night after night, add up over time. Just like John, you may not notice the damage right away. But one day, one night, could be the tipping point. Tonight, you have a choice. You can continue with habits that may be silently straining your heart. Or you can make one small change, one that could help you sleep better, feel better, and maybe even wake up stronger tomorrow. But what about hydration? Surely drinking more water is always a good thing, right? Not necessarily. John always believed in staying hydrated. "Water is life," he used to say, pouring himself a large glass every evening before bed. It was part of his nightly routine, just like the herbal tea he drank while reading a few pages of his favorite book. He found comfort in it, believing that hydration was always a good thing, especially as he got older. What he didn't realize was that too much of it, especially at night, was setting him up for something far more dangerous than thirst. For years, John had been waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. At first, it was just once, maybe around 2 or 3 in the morning. He would groggily make his way to the bathroom, then crawl back into bed, barely thinking about it. But as time went on, it became more frequent. Twice, then 3 times a night. Some nights he felt like he was spending more time getting up than actually sleeping. It was frustrating, but he told himself it was normal. After all, isn't waking up at night just part of getting older? His doctor had mentioned something about the bladder weakening with age, and John assumed that was all it was. What he didn't know was that these frequent awakenings weren't just inconvenient. They were putting an enormous strain on his body, particularly his heart. Every time John woke up to use the bathroom, his body was forced out of deep sleep, disrupting the natural cycles that were essential for rest and recovery. Instead of allowing his heart rate to slow and his blood pressure to drop, his body was constantly being jolted awake. His nervous system stayed active, his melatonin production was interrupted, and the restorative benefits of sleep were lost. Night after night his body was working harder than it should have been, and he had no idea. But the real danger came when John got out of bed. Each time he stood up in the middle of the night, his blood pressure had to adjust. Normally, when a younger person gets out of bed quickly, the body compensates, preventing dizziness or lightheadedness. But in older adults, especially those over 70, this adjustment is much slower. The sudden shift in position can cause a rapid drop in blood pressure, a condition known as postural hypertension. For John, this meant that every time he stood up to go to the bathroom, he was at risk of feeling faint or unsteady. One night, that risk became reality. John's biggest fear was not dying in his sleep, but falling, hitting his head, and never waking up again. And that night, as he stepped out of bed in the dark, feeling disoriented and still half asleep, his fear nearly came true. He felt the dizziness hit him almost instantly, a wave of lightheadedness that made the room spin. His hand reached out for the nightstand, but it was too late. His legs buckled, and he collapsed onto the floor. The sound of his body hitting the ground echoed through the house. Luckily, he had only suffered a few bruises, but the reality of what had just happened shook him to his core. He lay there for a few moments, heart racing, realizing how close he had come to something much worse. What if he had hit his head? What if he hadn't been able to get up? What if no one had found him until morning? Falls are one of the leading causes of injury-related death in older adults, and most of them happen at night. A simple trip to the bathroom can turn into a life-threatening event. Broken hips, head injuries, and long hospital stays are just some of the risks that come with a late-night fall. John had always worried about his heart, but he had never considered the danger of something as simple as getting out of bed too many times in the night. That night was a wake-up call. John started making small but powerful changes. First he cut back on fluids in the evening. He still drank plenty of water throughout the day, but by 6 p.m. he made a conscious effort to reduce his intake. No more large glasses of water before bed, no more herbal tea at night, just for the sake of relaxation. If he felt thirsty, he would take small sips rather than downing an entire cup. He also made sure to use the bathroom right before going to sleep, emptying his bladder as much as possible to reduce the chances of needing to get up later. He even adjusted his bedroom setup, adding a nightlight to avoid fumbling in the dark, and placing a sturdy chair next to his bed in case he ever needed extra support while getting up. Within days, he noticed a difference. He wasn't waking up as often, and when he did, he felt steadier, more in control. His sleep improved, and so did his energy during the day. It was such a simple change, yet it made an enormous impact on his overall well-being. The truth is, hydration is important, but so is timing. Drinking too much too late can do more harm than good, especially as we age. Cutting back in the evening doesn't mean depriving yourself of water. It means being mindful of your body's needs and setting yourself up for a safer, more restful night. Tonight, before you reach for that extra glass of water, take a moment to think about your nighttime routine. Are you setting yourself up for deep, uninterrupted sleep, or are you unknowingly creating conditions that put your health at risk? Now, what about the temperature of your room? You might think a warm, cozy bedroom is the key to a good night's sleep, but for John it was doing more harm than good. Think of your body as a car engine. When you sleep, it needs to cool down. But if the engine stays too hot all night, it starts to break down, putting your heart and your brain at risk. John Carter never liked feeling cold. Even as a young man, he always kept his house warm, preferring comfort over the chill of the night air. As he got older, that habit became even stronger. His bedroom was always set at a cozy 75 degrees, just warm enough to keep the night from feeling too harsh. He slept in long sleeves, soft flannel pajama pants and thick wool socks. A heavy comforter wrapped around him like a cocoon, giving him the sense of security he had always loved. To John, this was the perfect way to sleep. What he didn't realize was that his body was working against him. As we age, our ability to regulate body temperature weakens. When we're younger, our bodies naturally adjust, releasing heat when needed and keeping us cool through sweat and circulation. But after 70, those mechanisms slow down. The body doesn't release heat as efficiently, and when trapped in a warm room with heavy blankets, it can quickly become overwhelmed. John had been experiencing restless nights for months, but he had never connected it to the temperature of his bedroom. He often woke up feeling hot and uncomfortable, kicking off his blankets in the middle of the night only to pull them back on a few hours later, when the chill returned. Some mornings he woke up drenched in sweat, feeling more exhausted than when he had gone to bed. His heart would sometimes race, and there were days when he felt lightheaded before even stepping out of bed. He chalked it up to aging. What else could it be? What John didn't know was that sleeping in a warm room was silently putting stress on his heart. When the body overheats at night, the heart has to work harder to try and cool it down. Instead of resting, it stays active, pushing blood to the surface of the skin in an effort to release heat. For younger people, this is manageable, but for older adults, especially those with high blood pressure or underlying heart conditions, this extra workload can be dangerous. The constant strain can lead to an increased risk of heart attacks, strokes, and even sudden cardiac events. And the dangers didn't stop there. Sleeping in a warm room prevents the body from reaching deep, restorative sleep. This is the phase of sleep responsible for memory consolidation, immune system repair, and cognitive function. Without it, the brain struggles. Over time, poor sleep has been linked to higher risks of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. John had noticed his memory slipping. Small things at first, like forgetting where he had placed his keys or struggling to recall a word mid-sentence. He had assumed it was just part of getting older, but in reality, his restless nights were robbing his brain of the healing it needed. The problem wasn't just discomfort. It was a silent, nightly attack on his health. One night, after another restless evening of tossing and turning, John came across an article about the benefits of cooler sleep environments. He was skeptical at first. How could something as simple as lowering the thermostat improve his sleep? But the science was clear. Sleeping in a room between 60–67 degrees helped the body naturally lower its core temperature, leading to deeper, more restorative sleep and reduced cardiovascular strain. So he decided to try it. That night, John turned his thermostat down to 65 degrees. He swapped his thick comforter for a breathable cotton blanket and changed into lighter pajamas. He cracked his window open slightly, letting in fresh air for the first time in years. At first, it felt different, almost uncomfortable. But something surprising happened. For the first time in months, John slept through the night. He woke up feeling refreshed, clear-headed, and more energized than he had in a long time. His heart wasn't racing, his body wasn't drenched in sweat, and he actually felt ready to start the day. It wasn't a miracle cure. It was simply giving his body what it needed all along. Many seniors think warmth equals comfort, but the truth is, overheating at night is one of the most overlooked health risks for older adults. Keeping the room too warm not only disrupts sleep, but also increases the risk of dehydration, heart strain, and cognitive decline. By making a small adjustment, lowering the temperature using breathable fabrics, and allowing fresh air to circulate, you can protect your heart, improve your sleep, and wake up feeling stronger. John had spent years unknowingly making his nights harder on his body, but now with one simple change, he had found a way to wake up better, healthier, and more alive. But there's one more thing, something most seniors do every single night without realizing the risk. And it's perhaps the most dangerous habit of all. Your sleeping position is like the foundation of a house. If it's strong and aligned, everything functions properly. But if it's off, even just a little, it can slowly start to collapse. John Carter had always slept on his back. It felt natural, effortless. He had heard somewhere that sleeping on your back was good for spinal alignment, And since he never had any major back problems, he assumed it was the best position for him. He never questioned it, never thought about whether it might be affecting his health in other ways. But night after night something was happening while John slept, something he couldn't see, something he couldn't feel, but something that was silently putting a strain on his body. John's wife, before she passed, had often nudged him in the middle of the night, complaining that he snored too loudly, or that he would sometimes stop breathing for a few seconds, before gasping for air. "It's nothing," he used to say, brushing it off. "Just getting older." But after she was gone, no one was there to notice. No one was there to hear the quiet moments where his breath would pause, where his oxygen levels would drop, where his body would struggle, until one night it didn't recover. Sleeping on, your back might feel comfortable, but for many older adults it's one of the most dangerous positions you can be in. Gravity causes the tongue and soft tissues of the throat to relax and fall backward, partially blocking the airway. This leads to obstructive sleep apnea, a condition where breathing repeatedly stops and starts throughout the night. When this happens, oxygen levels in the blood drop. The heart is forced to work harder, and the risk of high blood pressure, heart disease, and even sudden cardiac arrest increases dramatically. John never thought much about how he felt in the mornings. He just assumed that waking up groggy with a dry mouth and a mild headache was a normal part of aging. But these were all signs that his body was fighting for air at night. Every time he stopped breathing, his brain sent out a distress signal, briefly waking him up just enough to start breathing again. The problem was, he never fully woke up to realize it. His sleep cycles were constantly disrupted, preventing him from reaching the deep restorative stages of sleep his body desperately needed. Over time, this kind of interrupted sleep takes a toll, not just on energy levels but on memory, immune function, and overall heart health. And it wasn't just sleeping on his back that was the problem. When he occasionally turned to his right side, he was unknowingly putting additional stress on his heart. Research has shown that sleeping on the right side can cause increased pressure on the heart, particularly in people with existing heart conditions. For someone like John, whose heart was already under stress from years of poor sleep, this was like adding extra weight to an already overloaded system. The solution, surprisingly, was simple. John's doctor recommended he start sleeping on his left side instead. This position helps the heart pump more efficiently, improves circulation, and even aids digestion. For people prone to acid reflux, sleeping on the left side can keep stomach acid from creeping up into the esophagus, reducing heartburn and promoting better sleep. At first it was uncomfortable. After decades of sleeping the same way, John found himself naturally rolling onto his back in the middle of the night. But with a few adjustments, he made it work. He started using a body pillow, placing it against his back to prevent himself from rolling over. He adjusted his pillow height to keep his neck aligned, ensuring that his airway stayed open throughout the night. Within a week, he noticed a difference. He wasn't waking up with a headache anymore. His breathing felt easier, and he started waking up feeling more refreshed than he had in years. For the first time in a long time, he realized just how much his sleeping position had been affecting his health. It wasn't just about comfort, it was about survival. Most people don't think twice about how they sleep, assuming that as long as they feel comfortable, they're fine. But small unconscious habits like sleeping on your back or on the wrong side can add up over time, quietly increasing the risk of serious health complications. If you've been sleeping on your back or your right side for years, now is the time to reconsider. Start by gradually adjusting your position, using pillows to help keep yourself in place. Pay attention to how you feel in the morning. Are you waking up feeling well rested, or do you still feel tired? Are you experiencing heartburn, dry mouth, or frequent nighttime awakenings? These small clues might be telling you more than you realize. So what happened to John, and what can we learn from his story? A month had passed since John made changes to his nighttime routine. At first, the adjustments felt strange. He had spent decades eating late, drinking a big glass of water before bed, keeping his room warm, and sleeping on his back. These habits were comforting, familiar. Changing them felt unnecessary until one morning something was different. John woke up feeling truly rested. There was no lingering exhaustion, no dull headache, no racing heartbeat. He stretched his arms, took a deep breath, and felt lighter than he had in years. The fatigue that had followed him for so long was gone. At first he thought it was just a good night. But as the days passed, the change was undeniable. His energy had returned. His mind felt sharper. His body no longer ached from restless sleep. Even his daughter Sarah noticed. "Dad, you look different," she said one afternoon. "You look younger." John smiled. He felt younger, stronger, more alive, and all it took were a few simple changes, adjustments that, at the time, had seemed insignificant. That's when he realized something important. Sleep wasn't just about resting. It was about healing. It was about living. For years, John had thought of sleep as just something his body did automatically, but now he understood. It was a time for his heart to recover, his brain to restore, clarity, his body to repair itself. Every night the body goes through an incredible process of renewal, but only if we give it the right conditions to do so. And for too long, John had unknowingly been working against himself. He thought back to the nights he had tossed and turned, sweating under heavy blankets, never considering that he was overheating his body into exhaustion. He remembered the times. He had woken up to use the bathroom multiple times, assuming it was just a part of aging, when in reality he was disrupting his own rest. He had accepted poor sleep as inevitable, never realizing he had the power to change it. But now everything was different. And the best part? It hadn't taken any drastic changes, just small, mindful adjustments. You can't change the past. But you can change your future, starting tonight. And that's where you come in. If you often wake up tired, restless, or not quite yourself, take a look at your nighttime habits. Are you eating too late? Drinking too much before bed? Keeping your room too warm? Sleeping in a position that might be restricting your breathing? Which of these habits do you recognize in your own routine? Try changing just one tonight and see the difference. A small shift, a single decision, could help you sleep better, feel better, and wake up stronger tomorrow. If you found this story helpful, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want more insights on how to care for your body and mind as you age, subscribe to our channel. Because taking care of yourself doesn't have to be complicated. It just starts with a good night's sleep.